Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update.
I didn't go to Ivy League school, and I just post what I'm interested in on Twitter, and people sort of realize, oh, this guy's pretty interested in business, and oh, maybe I'm getting some insight out of what he's posting.
Hi, guys, and welcome to a new series, a fresh series that we are doing on Inside IIM. Often we get very caught up in our day to day, our immediate concerns, and we don't talk about the future enough. And as the pandemic has made us realize, the future is uncertain, and people who are more prepared for it, people who understand how the future trends are going to turn out. To begin with, we are going to talk to someone who actually thinks a lot about the future. He thinks a lot about the future because he's in the business of investing, and investment is essentially a business that is run on future possibilities. Ryan Reeves is someone who's a very young guy who's just out of campus. He's just spent a couple of years out of campus, but he's done a bunch of very interesting internships, and he runs a very interesting company now where he is the CEO and the founder called Investing City. There are a lot of interesting trends that have been coming up, and we're going to talk to Ryan about that. So, Ryan, thanks a lot for doing this with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.
Perfect. So, Ryan, I'm going to get right into it. And just today, I saw something you had tweeted about Warren Buffett and how he looks at investments and all those kinds of things. And, it made me wonder that is Warren Buffett still relevant? Uh, do his investment strategies and the investment strategies that were useful, say, 20 years ago, do they still stand the test of time?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because people talk about how Buffett is, not relevant anymore, and he's not like a good tech investor or anything. But if you actually look at his portfolio, I mean, Apple is something like 40%, and the biggest company in the world.
Right.
So, I mean, he's definitely hit that one. I'd say that's probably the most dollars made on a single investment. I think there are definitely things that have changed though. For instance,
Right.
if you have a software company, you're not going to value it on book value. Like, they have very little assets. Like, to your point, there are some things that have changed. I mean, even just the way that the income statements kind of flow down with a software company, because you have to pay all your engineers, and it's hard to get a good engineer. And if you have a really great
Right.
team of engineers, you're going to have to pay them in stock. And so that hits your income statement, but maybe your free cash flow looks a little better because you can add that back. So there are certain things that are different, but I would say that Buffett is definitely still relevant. I don't want to go that far.
you know uh, that brings me to this interesting thing that you do on your Twitter, where you do these business breakdowns. You analyze different companies and see what is their business model, and how is it that their cash flows are, how are their earnings, etc. Tell us about some of your favorite businesses in the United States today and why.
So one interesting example that I wrote up a while ago is a company called Peloton in the United States. And so they make exercise
Peloton.
bikes.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because a lot of hardware companies have historically fizzled out because hardware is a tough business.
Right.
It's hard to kind of create pricing power. So Peloton also has a software piece of their business. They charge $39 per month, and then you get like a whole library of content on workout classes, and they've created this really strong community. So they have over 1 million members right now, and it's growing over 100%. So it's growing incredibly quickly. So I like this business model because, one, they have this hardware that sort of sets up an installed base of millions of members eventually, and then they can kind of layer on this
Right.
high margin software, which really reduces churn. And then there's also this cognitive aspect of, since the bike is actually pretty premium price, it's almost $2,300, like the nice one.
Wow.
That is sort of a sunk cost. So when people put up
Right.
$2,300, they're going to just pay the 39 extra dollars per month to make sure that they can access that to the fullest. So it's pretty interesting that using like this bias of sunk costs, they actually have a very, very low churn rate, way lower than you would think.
Ryan, how about analyzing a company that Indians have also used, an American company, maybe like an Airbnb?
So there's this investor named Dennis Hong, and he runs a fund called Shaw Spring Partners, and he has this idea of a cognitive referent. And I really love this idea because we're all very familiar with it. So Google would be a cognitive referent, meaning we say, oh, we're going to Google something. Like a company becomes
Right.
the verb. And
Right.
Airbnb and Uber are two examples of that. So in the United States or all around the world, people may say, oh, I'm going to Airbnb this, for the weekend, I'm going to go get this Airbnb. And so it's become very top of mind, which is really interesting. People sort of think like, oh, okay, that's nice. But there's actually a structural advantage that gives a company because it lowers the customer acquisition cost for them. So if they
Right.
have this idea that it's, customers always have this top of mind, that means that the company doesn't really have to do as much marketing because, just word of mouth, it'll spread very quickly.
Which are the companies that you've come to admire in terms of how they've handled the pandemic and the sudden scare that the whole world has seen and the sudden slowdown that the whole world has seen? Which are the companies that have been able to tide over that and actually gain a stronger foothold because of that?
Sure, I think the most obvious example is the software that we're using right now, Zoom. I mean, it's just become
Absolutely.
so ubiquitous. I've never seen a company, become that cognitive referent in a couple months. I mean, they really went from being relatively, unknown in the consumer sphere to all of a sudden, my grandma talking about, oh, I want to Zoom you. And it's just become
Right.
this verb that's really top of mind. And I think they've done amazing things. So they offered free Zoom to 100,000 K through 12 schools. They didn't charge for
Right.
anything. And I mean, they had the little security breach at the beginning of this pandemic, and they've really cleared that
Yes.
up. I think they've done a great job of just being this product and this company that is really fueling us through the pandemic. I mean, I know so many businesses that really wouldn't even be able to function without it. And, it'll be interesting
Right.
to see, what happens in the next couple of years, hopefully as this pandemic dies down. And, is Zoom going to still have like a core spot in remote work? What will the future of remote work look like? Will it be sort of a hybrid system? Will people just want to get back to the office? They're really tired of this. Will some companies just be fully remote? It's pretty interesting, the different viewpoints on this. And
Not only because of the pandemic, but even before that, do you feel that finally what you see around you, business education is finally breaking out from the whole Ivy League hangover? Is it more democratized now? Is there more access to great business education? Or do you think Ivy League is still the gold standard?
I think it's becoming more meritocratic, but I would still say there is some element where you go to an Ivy League in the United States. It's just this thing that gets you in a lot of places, and people really still hold
Right.
that highly. But I think there is some value to. I mean, Twitter is a great example. So I didn't go to Ivy League school, and I just
Right.
post what I'm interested in on Twitter, and people sort of realize, oh, this guy's pretty interested in business, and oh, maybe I'm getting some insight out of what he's posting. And so I'm without Twitter and without the internet, I never would have been able to get my foot into places, and it just never would have happened. So I think that's like the definition of it becoming more meritocratic. And I think that the internet really
Right.
opens things up. I like this idea of learning in public and you having sort of like this living resume. Because if you're applying for
Right.
jobs, like I'm a huge fan of Twitter, because if you're applying for jobs, the person on the other side of the table, their whole thing is trying to reduce their risk so that they don't look bad for their boss. And if you can provide so much evidence for them that it's a pretty no-brainer, because they already know your work ethic, they already know the types of insights that you're going to come up with, that really gives you such better odds versus if you're just sending in your resume, just like the thousands of people, it's hard to stand out versus if you
Right.
provide a lot of value in public, maybe you have a blog, it shows you proactive, just all of these things, I think it really differentiates you. And people, I've seen people get jobs on Twitter all the time where they build up a bit of a following because they posted really great content, and then then maybe they'll post a resume out there, and I've just seen it happen time and time again. So I'm a huge fan of
Right.
this idea of learning in public, and Twitter is a great place to do that.
Can we go deeper, and can you talk a little bit more about how can I get a job through Twitter?
Sure. So how to get a job through Twitter? I'd say the number one thing is try to engage and provide as much value as possible. So I think there's some value in sort of realizing, what am I trying to do? And so let's say you wanted to get a software engineering job, and you first of all find out what sorts of companies you'd be interested in and what sort of projects. And so maybe you do a big search and you narrow it down to maybe like 5 startups that you're really interested in. So from there, maybe
Right.
you put in your bio, software engineer looking for position, or just software engineer, right? And maybe you have a link to your blog that shows
Right.
all of these projects that you've done, and just all this impressive work that you're pretty curious about, and maybe like a link to your GitHub or whatever it is. And so from there, then you can
Right.
start engaging with those 5 startups. So maybe their CEO puts something out on Twitter, and maybe you give a really great reply that provides value, or he's looking for an answer to something. And if you do that time and time again, not being annoying or not tagging them in things, just really trying to provide value to them. And if you do that for long enough, you'll start getting
Right.
noticed. Maybe not by that CEO, but maybe by another employee from that company who follows you. And then once they follow you, you can start to direct message them. So anybody that follows you, you can send them a direct message. And so boom, you all of a sudden have a point of contact at that company, and maybe you direct message them saying, hey, I'm really interested in your company. I would love to chat on the phone for 5 minutes. And since they already know your type of character, and they already know what that you might be pretty interesting in terms of insights, then they're going to be much more likely to say yes to that. And then you have your in right there. And then you say, hey, is there anybody else at the company who would be helpful to talk to? And all of a sudden you have this network of people at the company now, and you didn't know anybody before. And then maybe a job position comes up, and you say, hey, can you refer me and put my resume to the top or whatever. So it's just thing after thing. And it doesn't have to be a slimy thing at all. You ideally just want to provide as much value as possible, because if you think about it from the other person's point of view, the person that's hiring you, like I said, they just want to reduce their risk so that they look good. And if you can do everything in your power to enable that, then it's just you just tilt your odds in your favor a lot.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for doing this with us. Thank you so much for giving us an insight into your mind and how you look at investing and how you look at careers and businesses. We are far away from where you are, and thank you so much for providing an insight from the US, from that market, from your world. We really appreciate it, and I think our students will learn a lot from what you had to share today. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Hi guys, Inside IM has come up with an exciting new one-on-one mentorship product where you get to interact with superstar managers from different businesses, different functions. You can ask them everything around your career, your education, your future success. If you are interested, the link is in the description below. Thanks.